you go. MTN.
Welcome to the 30th MTN Business World Executive Breakfast Meeting. This is coming to you live from the MTN House in Accra, and this event is coming to you with the strictest protocols put in place to ensure that the hosts, the panelists, and the crew are protected, and also to ensure that we get to your homes, your offices, wherever you are, with this very all-important conversation. Now, what are we talking about today? The theme for today is redefining education in the age of the new normal. I know for a lot of us parents, we've had to deal with a lot of issues this particular season. Those working from home have had to combine working from home with supervising the children as they get some form of education online. Those who are not too lucky to work from home but have to go to work sometimes and shuffle between work and the house, having challenges supervising children whilst they get educated, or putting in place the systems to get this done. Now, for those who are also workers and have to school at the same time and supervise children at the same time, we've also had our own issues. So how is education going to be post-pandemic? Is it going to stay the same? Is it going to change? That is the conversation we're having today. So the theme is redefining education in the age of the new normal. Now, when COVID-19 hit, we had conversations. So schools are using Google Classrooms, others are using Zoom, others are using even WhatsApp group chats to reach out to students and to ensure education is done effectively. Now, there are language apps. Yesterday, I saw this article where now the Google Translator will translate from different languages to other languages without even having to go through the English language as the first pivot before retranslating to other languages. There are so many things coming up. Zoom apps are also coming up, and there are new technologies, new platforms which are also being built for education to be done effectively. But how is it going to be? I have 4 very experienced people who are going to help us have this conversation, and we have you as well watching us right now. You can send your comments, your thoughts, your experiences, just write in the comment section of the video, and also share this video link so that others around the world can also watch this all-important conversation and contribute, because the conversations we have shape policy, they shape how things are done, and they shape the future for us. So this conversation is for all of us to have. Now, there are questions we'll be answering. For example, could the move to online learning be the catalyst to create a new, more effective method of educating students? While some worry about the hasty nature with which we've had to transition to online, some are also optimistic about the opportunities in the particular space. So we are going to have a very well-rounded conversation this morning. My name is Kojo Akoto Boateng. I work with City FM and City TV as head of digital media. I'm also on the City Breakfast Show. And I have 4 experienced people in the sector who are going to be my main panelists for today. So I'll start by introducing my panelists, then we'll go for a quick break. When we return from the break, we'll get into the conversation. Now, Krista Elise Sanders Bobtoya has been involved in the field of international education for the past 2 decades. She's committed to promoting international educational opportunities to students worldwide and has worked and studied in Spain, in Germany, in Ethiopia, in Ghana, in Brazil, and the United States. Currently, she's the director or head of Webster University's Ghana campus, and is the only American university in the sub-region offering US accredited graduate and undergraduate degrees. She's lived in Accra since 2004. She spent her first decade in Ghana managing New York University's 6th global site, That was also the university's first study abroad program on the African continent. She's got a lot of great academic qualifications and awards. She went to a university that I toured last year, Columbia University. I toured Columbia University in New York to see their programs and the campus, maybe to convince me to join them. So after this conversation, you tell me more about the university. She actually completed a graduate degrees in counseling psychology with a concentration in cross-cultural studies, multiculturalism, while at the Columbia University in New York. And she graduated also from the Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, where she graduated with the highest distinction. For those of you following the American election, Georgia is a name that you may be familiar with. Krista Ellis Sanders Bobtoya, the first panelist I'm introducing today. Krista, wave to our audience.
Sure, it's quite an honor, and thank you for that very kind and elaborate introduction, Kojo. Appreciate it.
Good to have you, Krista.
Thank you.
Now, the next person I'm going to introduce, as I told her earlier when I entered the auditorium, she works with my favorite university in Africa at the moment. She works with Ashesi University. Dr. Heather Beam is an engineer by training. She completed a PhD in mechanical engineering at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 2015. Now, while a graduate student, Heather developed a vision for seeing MIT-style hands-on learning environments all around the world. And she became active in the MIT D-Lab, where she co-founded the MIT D-Lab education class. She's mentored dozens of students in projects spanning 4 continents, and she's lived in Ghana since 2016. She's led the Practical Education Network in the training of thousands of West African STEM teachers to deploy experiential pedagogies. Now, since 2008, she assumed the position as a lecturer at Ashesi University, where she's helping build a new engineering program to train ethical leaders for Africa's future. For Africa to develop engineering innovation is one of the key things, and she's one of the key trainers. Heather, good morning. Welcome to the conversation.
Good morning, Kojo. Thanks for having me.
I think you should give our
Hi,
viewers a
everyone.
wave to see
Pleasure
you.
to be here with you all.
Yes, so that's Dr. Heather Beam. Now, the next person I'll introduce, I affectionately call him Uncle Anis, because for the past 7 years, I've worked with him on the City FM education program. He's been the key resource helping us shape a lot of lives. He's committed to preparing a new generation of teachers and students for national and international leadership. In the United States, he taught for 10 years with the LA Unified School District and coordinated a gifted and talented education program. In Ghana, he founded the GATE Institute to update teachers in current trends in education and leadership. And he writes a weekly column that I read a lot in the Daily Graphic. It's The Education Matters. And he has a bi-monthly column, The Human Capital, in the Business World newspaper. He attended the school, Infantipim School, and earned a degree in business at the California State University, LA. He did his graduate work at the English department and the School of Education at the California State Polytechnic University. And he's currently running the GATE Institute in Ghana. Anis Hafa, Uncle Anis, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you very much.
And the last person I'll introduce is a lecturer at my school, the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. We say Nyansapor was Saneno Bajemba. Now, Dr. Peter Mwaku Yirinchi is a senior lecturer at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He holds a PhD in mathematics with specialization in computer vision, scientific computing, and industrial modeling. He's joining us via Zoom. Doc, give us a Zoom. We can see you, so give us a wave.
Yeah.
So that's Dr. Peter Mwaku Yirinchi joining us from the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. We'll go for a quick break. Right after the break, we'll take the welcome address, and after that, we'll begin the conversation. Stay with us.
Say yellow to the My MTN app. It's all your favorite yellow things in one place. Buy airtime, data, check your account balance, send Momo, and more. At MTN, we're constantly innovating to deliver on our promise to bring all our customers the benefits of a modern, connected life. Our customers have busy lives, and because we care for you, it's only natural that we keep things simple and make our customers' lives easier. So we designed an app with you in mind. The My MTN app, a clean, interactive portal that holds your favorite MTN transactions. Easy to navigate, colorfully exciting, and free to use. Innovation has never looked this good. Go to the Google Play Store or App Store to download the My MTN app today and put your own control center in your hands. My MTN app is proof that we're good together and we day for you.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome you to the 30th edition of the MTN Business World Breakfast Meeting, which is the last of the executive breakfast meetings for the year 2020. This year, we have had the opportunity to discuss the future of work, preparing the workplace for talent needs, and the changing face of retail in Ghana, scaling successfully with innovation and e-commerce. Today's theme, Redefining Education in the Age of the New Normal, will enable us rethink this critical area of our lives because COVID-19 has brought us to a point where it has become necessary to deliberate on suitable choices as far as education is concerned. In the space of education, e-learning has become the buzzword. Distance education used to be for a select few, but today it is the primary one that comes to mind when we think of education. With the closure of schools to curb the spread of the pandemic, MTN Ghana, supported by zero-rating over 200 educational websites, to complement the efforts of key stakeholders and the government to ensure that education continues. I believe we all want to know what the future holds for us, whether you're a parent, a teacher, a student, or a worker in the educational sector. We are privileged to have distinguished personalities in the persons of Anis Hafa, an educationist and founder, Gate Institute, Dr. Hida Beam, CEO, Practical Education Network, Ashesi University, Krista Elise Sanders Boptoya, Campus Director, Webster University, Ghana, and Dr. Peter Mwako Urenchi, Senior Lecturer, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, to share their invaluable experiences and insights on the theme. Ladies and gentlemen, I look forward to a very exciting session this morning. A warm welcome once again to our panel and to everyone joining us online. Thank you.
MTN.
Welcome back. This is the 30th MTN Business World Executive Breakfast. We are talking about education in the age of new normal. And I'm watching the stream right now and I'm seeing some of your comments. Now today we are going to reward you as you watch and and participate in this conversation. Now, Amo Asari, Richmond said, this is a nice intervention and a nice conversation. I'm glued and I'm ready for whatever will come up. And K. Bizzle says, looking forward for more of such engagements. Kudos to MTN for leading these conversations. Now, let me give you some good news before we get into the conversation. The MTN Unicom service is a unified communication solution with tailor-made features such as conferencing, IVR, and call center solutions. Register your participation to be selected to win 3 months free connection to the Unicom service from MTN Business. Send your business name and contact information to sales.mtnbusiness.gh@mtn.com. Now, when you send this, you register your participation to be selected to win 3 months subscription, and this is a game changer for business. So if you run a business, just send your business name and your contact information to sales.mtnbusiness.gh@mtn.com, and you stand a chance of getting this 3 month subscription to get your business going. Also, during the conversation, we shall reward free subscription to the Unicom service to the 5 most interactive users. 5 most interactive users. So in addition to the free subscription to Unicom service, right, we will be rewarding 5 most interactive users with 200 Ghana Cedi shopping vouchers, right? So the 5 most interactive users of the conversation, you get 200 Ghana Cedi shopping voucher at the end of the conversation. Now let me get back to the studio to keep the conversation going. I'm going to start with you, Heather. You are sitting very close to me. You're an engineer, MIT, a lot of the technology we've seen and the innovation in the world has been from the MIT labs. And then the pandemic struck and we got into this particular situation. How has the period been for you so far? Especially your work at Ashesi and training engineers to make lives better for us tomorrow?
Yeah, thank you, Kojo. So I'll be speaking from two perspectives, both at the university level through my role teaching engineering at Ashesi, and then also working through Practical Education Network, the NGO that I founded, which is doing training for STEM teachers at the basic school level. So I'll be happy to share my perspective both from the university level and the basic school side. So for Ashesi, COVID has forced us to go online. We were able to make that transition within about 2 weeks of the campus being closed. And it's been a learning process, you know, immediately from the starts. But I think what I've appreciated about the whole thing is the commitment from leadership to make the transition. And I think all stakeholders, teachers and students, have learned a lot in the process of teaching online for the last about 8 months now. And students are receiving it well. You know, despite the challenges that it entails being at home, learning from home, a lot of students are reporting how this new way of learning is bringing out more interesting interactions for them. And so I see a lot of promise in this. And similarly with the work we're doing at Penn at the basic school level, also shifting online with our STEM teacher training program.
Yeah.
And we're seeing similar response. People are intrigued, interested in this new way of continuing to access new educational ideas and interventions through digital platforms, so that even if we're quite a distance away, we can still share ideas.
Crystal, let me come to you. You had a university here, Webster University. How has it been for you? How has the transition and the period been for you, managing students, managing your operations, and being effective?
Well, I think it's been a really interesting and also a challenging period for all of us in higher education. First of all, just as sort of a groundwork here, Webster University. It's an American university, and we have campuses all across the world. In fact, in 10 countries. Our home campus is in the United States in St. Louis, Missouri. And the Ghana campus was just founded in 2013. And we started receiving students in 2014 at both the undergraduate and graduate level. So just so your audience is aware of the institution, we're located in East Legon. And during this period, similar to what Heather mentioned, we also had to transition to an online environment within a period of just 2 weeks. And fortunately, Webster University has been a leader in online education since the late 90s. I think the complexity of it is that we have so many different types of campuses all over the world. We have domestic locations, we serve the US military, we have 10 international locations, including Ghana, and to transition all of those campuses at the same time was very much a challenge. I think it also exposed quite a lot in terms of the inequalities that we see, in terms of those who can access internet and those who cannot, even within a private education system, including for our faculty. They had some challenges, and so we had to open our campus just for faculty to be able to execute their classes successfully. But similar to what Heather also mentioned, our students have appreciated this experience, but I do not feel that it has replaced the in-the-classroom experience. I think what we've learned is that you have to have almost a hybrid approach, a nice blend, where students can also be in the classroom and then also experience the great technology that we have today outside of the classroom. During this period, we also signed a partnership with Zoom, and we also have a learning platform called the World Classroom, and our students were able to take advantage of all of those. Teacher training also was incredibly important, and we learned that the training has to be continuous in order to be effective in the classroom. And finally, I think we have to look at this issue of student engagement. So we're at a period now that we've been online since March. And so there's a bit of fatigue that comes with this for both students as well as faculty. So we've learned a lot about how do you engage students? What type of platforms should you use? Do you use, for example, in Zoom, classroom breakout sessions, polls? What kinds of things do you do? And also mental health has become an issue during this period because there's been a period of isolation. So I think that the lessons have been great, but for the most part, I think it's an exciting time in terms of the technological revolution that is happening within higher education. And I'm glad that we've been able, for the most part, to seamlessly carry out this online environment at Webster.
Interesting. Let me come to you, Anis. You deal a lot in the Ghanaian education system. You get a lot of feedback from all sorts of people because you've been consulting for the sector for years. How has it been for you, and what are some of the feedback that you've received so far?
We're talking about a new normal, but I will tell you that the new normal started for me in the 1980s, not today. And the reason why I'm saying that is that I was taking a course in data processor at the Kapolo University in Pomona, and it was a huge room, about the size of this room, and we had huge mainstay computers, and we had what we call the punch cards. Those days, I don't know, some of you young people will not remember it. We used to have what we call COBOL, Fortran, S-Basic, and that sort of thing.
Programming languages that later came to C++ and all these with the former.
This is good for you. But then what happened is that I lived in Los Angeles, and I had to travel 36 miles to Pomona, and I had to stay there all night. And I was able to pull through and get a degree which involved that kind of work. And then in the 1980s, Bill Gates and Steve Jobs introduced the desktop computer. And I got my desktop computer. And it changed me as a human being, in the sense that I was coordinating a program for gifted and talented students. And the idea was for them to develop themselves to become lifelong learners. And then you realize that this lecture method is not for them. So what is it that you do for these young people so they become lifelong learners? That's one aspect of it. Not only that, I was teaching English composition, but I was not teaching it on a piece of paper. We're teaching it on the on Word, where it's easier for you to correct mistakes and that sort of thing. And the idea in California at the time was that we are going to raise a crop of young people who not only have common sense, but they have uncommon sense. Common sense is what everybody else is mainstream to have. So that really changed my life in terms of how you want to focus on a particular person, know exactly what it is, what their natural aptitudes are, and how you as a teacher can help them. Now, this was in the 1980s and 1990s. Now, I got back to Ghana in 1995. So I started this sort of training for teachers across board. I started primarily with the private schools, starting from North Lyceum. And the issue, what I was teaching was called critical thinking. At the time, this was 1995. I want us to give the historical basis for how I've evolved so far. It was only in the Ghana syllabus at the time. So some of the schools were hesitant. But there was one principal by the name of Mrs. Comfort Engman. He said, look, this is new. We want to be able to develop our thinking critically. So the idea is that what you call learner profiles. You have the knowledge, where you memorize things and you produce them. And then you have understanding. Is that how do you understand this information the way that, so that when it comes out of you, you own it. All the way through creativity and that sort of thing. So basically, that is what I've been doing then. But what has happened now in terms of government policy is that we have the National Pre-Tertiary Education Curriculum Framework. And it spells all these things out. And that was before COVID. But it's done such that it fits in our today's normal. For example, how do you become critical thinkers to solve problems? Because you cannot be a critical thinker on a piece of paper where you do multiple choice, true, false, and that sort of thing. So the idea is that how do we begin to solve problems? And then I will summarize it by saying this. We have great potential in this country. Let's say someone gets a first degree. It's a potential. Someone gets a double master's degree, it's a potential. Someone has a PhD, it's a potential. But to be honest with you, I'm not impressed by that. I want to go back to 1925. Kwejil Agri. He said, look, don't tell me what you know. Show me what you can do. So when we begin to look at education that way, then the degrees just become potential. The accomplishment is exactly what it is that we do the education now. So this is where we are going forward now. But the new normal, as you say, has opened the Pandora's box, where we see possibilities. And as time goes on, I will tell you exactly how I'm using technology for medical students to make life much easier for me as a teacher, and also to make life much easier for them as learners who want to become specialists in the brain, in the heart, the kidney, and that sort of thing. But I would tell you this. I love this moment. I don't like the COVID, but I love the possibilities that COVID has brought in terms of how we can become lifelong learners and then take our own learning into our own hands. So that we are not excessively dependent on someone, a sage on the stage, someone who's standing in front of the class and talking to me all day long. Because look, I forget easily. But then if I can own the process of learning, then I don't need someone to wake me up in the morning, because I started something that needs to continue. It's in my subconscious mind, and I can't wait to get up in the morning. And what I tell young people is this: education never stops. And COVID-19 really is propelling that. And I turned 73 in April. But I'm studying now more than I've ever done in my life, because it's much easier. All I need is my laptop, the Wi-Fi, a printer, and I'm in business. So that is the message that I'm trying to get across to teachers in the country, that this is a time where we now have to take the responsibility on ourselves to continue to add value to who we are. If you don't add value to yourself, how on earth are you going to add value to somebody else? So in a nutshell, this is what is happening with what we're trying to do with the GATE Institute.
You've said a lot of things. There are two that I want all of us to build on later after we hear from Dr. Irenchi. So don't tell me what you can do. Show me.
Don't tell me what you know.
What you know. Show me what you can do.
Good.
Right. In our educational setup, especially in Ghana, we've always had this issue with the fact that we are becoming a bit more theoretical and we are not getting the practical and hands-on experience and the hands-on training. Now, with the pandemic and with education becoming more virtual for a lot of students, we're also seeing a trend where students do not get the chance to do practical lessons. So how will we be able to break this barrier in the virtual system to let students not only get to know, but also get to do? So we'll try to answer that later.
Good.
And then you mentioned the thing about the pandemic. Aside the disease, the environment is created, giving us opportunities to own the process of learning. But if you look at the inequalities also in the system, we realize that some people in the urban areas are in a good place, others in rural areas are not in a good place. How do we as educators, as Ghanaians, as people who influence policy, get the government and other players to put in place the right structures so that we bridge the inequality gap? These are two questions I want us to think about after Dr. Irenchi gives us his initial thoughts. So, Doc, you've heard Heather, you've heard Krista, you've heard Anis. You are in Kumasi, Nyansa Paul Care University, big university. That's my school. I was at the Unity Hall. And I'm thinking about how the over 3,000 students who are usually at Unity Hall are home right now and getting education. How has the experience been for you, the lecturers and the educators, in imparting the knowledge onto these people?
Yes, thanks for the question. The online education is not very new to the university. In fact, prior to 2005, I should say, the university was involved in what we call the African Virtual University, and I think just when the project was over, the university set up a faculty, and now it's at a collegiate structure. So we've been running distance learning at least for the last 15 years. I think what was critical was the being able to respond to the numbers that we have. Currently, we are probably the largest university in Ghana now, because we anticipating maybe about 70,000 students this year. And so the technology was there, but it was difficult to utilize the technology that we have for the students and staff, because they were not ready or probably oriented for it. So it was interesting, as I think the other panelists have mentioned, but it was also difficult because we had to quicken up and set up systems that was going to support these students and staff within a very short period. And of course, it wasn't without problems. So the concept is not new to us, but the response to the problem because of the abrupt nature of COVID was the issue. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Doc, for your initial comment. So I'm coming back to Accra. This is the 30th MTN Business World Executive Breakfast. We are talking about education in the new age of the new normal. My guests, or my panelists, I have Anis Hafa, I have Krista Sanders Bobtoya, I have Heather Beam, and I have Dr. Yirinchi, Dr. Heather Beam and Dr. Yirinchi joining us on Zoom from Kumasi. Now, if you are joining this conversation, you stand a chance of winning 200 Ghana cedis worth of shopping vouchers if you end up being one of the 5 most interactive users. To be amongst the 5, you should share the video, you should comment, ask questions, and you should basically be interactive so that we keep the conversation going. Now, the MTN Unicom service is also a unified communication solution with tailor-made features such as conferencing, IVR, and call center solutions. You get to register your participation by sending an email to sales.mtnbusiness.gh@mtn.com to be selected to win 3 months free connection to the Unicom service from MTN Business. This is a great opportunity to drive your business growth. So jump onto it. The email is sales.business.gh@mtn.com and see if you'll be one of the people who will get 3 months subscription for the Unicom service. Now, back to the conversation. And I'm picking bits and pieces from all that you said. When Krista was speaking, Krista mentioned the fact that now we also need to think about the psychological effects of the moment on students and teachers. Because, look, I have a son who is almost 2 years old. Before the pandemic, he used to go to the creche every day, had about 8 teachers who would physically engage him. Now there's a pandemic, the mother is working, and he has to be looking at a screen to get some form of education. And sometimes I feel that he's stressed because when you go home, he feels elated, he feels more excited, and everything changes. And we are seeing this across for even teachers and students. So the psychological effect is there. And Heather also mentioned the fact that training teachers is also a very important thing. So I want us to give our points or our answers with all these things in mind. So ensuring teachers are trained well to deliver efficient services, ensuring that the psychological effects of the moments is managed so that students don't go through a lot of stress, and teachers as well. And the most important for me, really, which I picked from Anis's initial submission, how to be more practical in our education, because education in Ghana largely has been theoretical. Over the past 2 decades, our exams have moved from theoretical and practical-based exams to a lot of multiple-choice exams. How do we deliver practical education in these times through the virtual learning platforms? I want to start with you, Anis, and then I'll come all the way back here, and I'll have Dr. Yirinchi join us.
Now the first question, in terms of the change that young people are going through, being taught online, that's a difficult thing. That's probably one of the biggest disadvantages of the situation we find ourselves. You know, I have a grandson too. He spends most of the time with the mother. So the mother is working at home and babysitting at the same time. And occasionally, he'll go to school, you know, it used to be 5 days a week, but now I think she's cut it down to maybe a day or 2. So these are the real challenges, and I don't know how we're going to resolve that. We'll see how that goes. But then the other question is, in terms of, don't tell me what you know, show me what you can do.
Yeah.
And what I say is this. A lot of us who were educated in Ghana here and even in parts of the world have become victimized through the education process that we get. And I will give you an example. I studied French in secondary school for 4 years. I could not speak it. There were 100 of us, and not too many of us could speak it. I would imagine that out of the 100 I'm serious about this, so don't laugh.
No, I just remembered my French experiences.
You are a victim to me and you.
French teachers were teachers we didn't like.
Yeah.
The Misues, we didn't
Yeah.
like them because you will go through the lesson, you will still not be able to speak, you'll be beating, you'll be... So I really didn't like French.
Are you serious?
Yes.
But we knew the subject-verb agreement.
Yeah.
We need the pronouns. We need the nouns. We need the common nouns and that sort of thing, but we could never speak it. So we've all been disadvantaged in the system. And I would tell you this. There was a program that I was doing in the U.S. called English as Second Language.
Okay.
This was for American immigrants who want to become citizens. And here I was, and they were to speak in English in 6 months, not in 4 years. But then the difference is this. We had a lab that is set up for language acquisition. We call the Language Arts Lab, where there's audiovisuals, so you can see language as it progresses, where you have earphones, where you have, how do you call it? You have a technician who's there to help you, and you have a computer software and so on. So in 6 months, you could speak it. And then the voice does not just have to come from the teacher, because I'm only one person with one set of vocal cords. How can I use it all the time? So now what do? You go into audiovisual means and so on, so you could be able to speak it. So what I'm saying is, for now, in terms of practicality of it, you can go on YouTube, and you can learn to speak French in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months. So that's the advantage without even a teacher. All you want to do is to have the Wi-Fi, be able to tune in, and that sort of thing. Good, that's one. And the other thing is this: we studied French. Excuse me, I'll finish with French. Music for 4 years. I couldn't play a simple flute. All we had was a piece of paper with scales on it. Put you remember that one too. You have the crotchet, you have the staccato, you have all these things, and then you score 10 over 10 or 100%.
Yeah.
But you couldn't play a simple flute. Mm-hmm. Now you can go on YouTube, and you can, with a little instrument, and you teaching yourself, you can be able to learn these things. So when we come back to, don't tell me what you know, show me what you can do, this is how technology is helping right now. So that's just one aspect of it. Later on, I will tell you how I'm also using that same
So from what you're saying, the traditional system was not creative in its form to impart the knowledge right. And technology actually is going to amplify the lack of creativity or the presence of creativity to get us what we need. And I'm saying this because if teachers are using infographics, if they are using animated videos, for example, in the engineering class, if you're explaining torque, right? When my lecturers were explaining axial forces and all those things, they will just draw something and say this is axial force. But if we had infographics, it would make me appreciate them better. So the bit about practical education really isn't the problem in the virtual space. It's just about us getting the right material and presenting them right to get the students to understand whatever is being imparted into. Is that what you're saying, Anis?
That's what I'm saying. I think you should be a teacher too, because you've just summarized what I said very, very well. Wasn't it good at it?
Let me go to you, Krista.
Well, I think that this time has also shown us that there needs to be a clear shift from knowledge acquisition. So looking at the traditional classroom setting where we have the lecturer, and you receive the information and sometimes you regurgitate the information, right? That rote learning style. Obviously, with technology and the developments, that has changed. We need to see a shift from the knowledge acquisition to skill acquisition, that practical component. And so one of the things is that we also have to sort of revolutionize the curriculum.
Yep.
That is very, very important. What are we teaching? Are we making sure that the students of tomorrow are well equipped for the careers of tomorrow? So a lot of the jobs that are going to be developed, even in the next 10 years, they haven't even been created yet.
Yeah.
But yet we're dealing with Generation Z, right? This generation has had a laptop in their hand from the very beginning. I know for myself, I didn't, have a computer or a tablet until I got to college. I hope I'm not dating myself here. But that is the reality, and it's also the reality in our part of the world. Most people have not grown up with a computer, so how do we deal with it? We need to focus on the soft skills. We need to look at things like adaptability, which this period has taught everyone, that we have to adapt. We have to be flexible. Emotional intelligence, we have to look at those type of things. Being, let's say, innovative, but also the entrepreneurial skills. So if we're not teaching those and we're all focused on theory, that's not really going to help us in producing the next generation of workforce that are going to be futuristic, that are going to be working with technology. So we need to work with that. In terms of this situation, we discussed mental health.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of my background as well. It is critical that we look at the fact that young people, whether in university or, as mentioned before, our grandchildren, our children, I have a 9-year-old. I mean, she's an only child, and she has been in the house for the last how many months? 9 months?
9 months.
In front of a screen. And that is very, very draining. So, you know, at Webster University, one of the things that we've done is that we've been providing virtual counseling sessions.
Okay.
And now you see also with technology, there are all kinds of apps that are coming out that are very good tutoring apps. Even counseling apps may come out in the near future, and we need those kinds of things to be prepared for the future. We also cannot ignore artificial intelligence. The need to have robotics in the curriculum and other types of areas that will truly prepare students for the careers of, you know, the next century and this century as well. Yeah.
Let me come to you, Heather.
Yeah, I would love to touch on the practical component that you've been bringing up, because that's really the core of what we are working on at Practical Education Network, which again is an NGO I started a few years ago. And I have to also shout out to Uncle Anis, who I met early on in the journey and inspired me to keep going in this line, since he's such an advocate for practical education. So this is very much a question we have been wrestling with over the last few months, is how do you still enable the hands-on aspect of learning, because as we've all been saying, that is really the key for quality learning. And so it's something we've been thinking about a lot. And we've been testing things, and I'm happy to say we're now piloting our teacher training online with around 300 teachers over the next 6 months in Kumasi, Ahanta West, and Zima East districts in Western region, and then some districts here in Greater Accra. And what we're doing is we're doing a combination of live sessions where we, you know, establish that, human relationship, but then we also leverage pre-recorded videos, instructional videos for teachers to watch on their own with instructions for how you would do a practical lesson, and leveraging materials that they can readily find in their own environments. So it's not a theoretical something, you know, that you just look at and you're like, oh, that would be nice if I could do that practical thing. Yeah. No, it's let's bring together a bottle, let's bring together a balloon and straws, and then let's explore concepts of force and pressure through those materials that you have in your own even house, which, you know, most people are at home at the moment. So that's the realm that we're entering in, and we're seeing really great response so far. And I think there's a lot of promise there. You know, our goal at Penn is to, in the next 5 years, train all the teachers, all the pre-tertiary teachers, science teachers in Ghana on practical approaches using local materials. It's a big vision, but we think that if we can leverage this online platform effectively, then we'll be able to succeed in that. And I just want to re-emphasize what my fellow panelists have said, which is that COVID is showing us that technology is a necessary thing for us to try to embrace in our educational endeavors. But it's just part of what we need. Ultimately, it's what happens in the learning that really matters. Technology is just a tool. It's just a platform. You signing on to Google Classroom doesn't, in and of itself, change what you learn. We need teachers that can effectively use those tools, and we need students to be able to do practical work while they're still in the online environment in order to really learn effectively. Interesting.
I like the fact that you are teaching science students to be able to be more effective, because I did science at the senior high school level, and if you talk about redox reactions, reduction and oxidation reactions, we learned them all right with chemical equations and all, but it was only when I became an adult that I realized that if there's a stain in, say, your WC and you use a bleach, the reaction of the bleach to the stain that will let the stain go off is a redox reaction. And so I like the fact that you are teaching science students so that they will be more practical in using these everyday examples to teach students in these times for them to have a good grasp of what they are learning. Let me go to Dr. Irenchi. You are a mathematician, mathematics lecturer, senior lecturer at Kia University. How are you engaging the students? How practical are the sessions? And what is the feedback you are getting from the students? Is it helping, or you would need the students back in the classrooms to be able to effectively teach them, for them to be the great mathematicians like the Professor Alotes and the Professor Dr. Datsons?
Yes. Normally when we have to discuss this, I just want to be a bit more practical about what is real. So there's a long-term plan that if it works out, then using technology-enhanced learning to work will be okay. But there are practicalities that maybe we need to consider. It's good to dream about some of these technologies, but what are the practicalities? And that's what I wanted to emphasize on. So let me just paint a picture of Care University. We, like I told you, we are almost 65,000 to expecting about 70,000 students in a 7 square mile radius environment. We have only 1,000 faculties, so that means that 1:70 students. I think the standard, the maximum should have been 18, and that's 70. You have students who have no access to computers themselves, and the closest thing they have is a phone, and if you are lucky, it's an Android phone that can access data correctly. You have classrooms that are not enough, so you have classes that can range from 200, 400 to 600 people in a class. If you are lucky, and it's a graduate class, maybe about 10 or 15 thereabouts. These are the practicalities in this part of the world, and even though I have overly elaborated them, it's only technology that can reduce this. I'll give you some practical example. When I first joined the university, I was given a course in engineering and numerical analysis, and almost every engineer would have to take that course. And my department were about 19. Everybody has several credit hours, so I had to take that course. It meant that I had to take about 1,200 students just alone. So even though the ratio, when you average it, is about 1:70, certain individuals, based on their courses that they teach, would far extend. So imagine that I have 1,200 students to teach, and the semester is starting. You can complain, but if you are going to get help, it's going to come next year or two when the government gives approval for appointments. If you are going to get help, probably you'll get maybe supporting staff, but that will be maybe 1 or 2. So even if you divide 1,200 by 2 or 3 people, you are still not going to get the numbers. These are the realities on the ground. So immediately at that time, the only option that I had was to probably put the students on a virtual classroom. You will have a much bigger lecture. I used to call it a church, so that you have this big lecture, a big church service, and then you can now break the class down into smaller groups, and so that they can have the tutorial. And that didn't work too well. So the only practical thing we could do at the time, like I said, was to put them on the virtual classroom where there are activities, what we call the activity-based learning construct. So you have various activities that can be done online. A person can ask a question, and when it's 10 o'clock and I'm back home, I could read it and probably respond. So you can have both synchronous and asynchronous interactions. So like the other panelists have said, technologies only come to enhance the processes, but you need to have a plan for it. The technologies have been there for a very long time, but you need to know how to engage with it to reduce it. So in a place like my university, where it's a public university and it's large and all of that, you have peculiar challenges than when you have a small school and the students are few and you have enough faculties to just engage with them. So, I mean, in a nutshell, what I just want to say in terms of the practical is that you may have challenges like I've just demonstrated, but there's always a way out. to reduce it. In the virtual system, you could have the students put into groups, and the groups would have their own different levels of interactions, and you could have different assignments that you can give them. And I've seen that many people talk about MCQs as a very theoretical thing. That's not the case. It's just how you set it. Everything that you're doing, if you do it effectively, it will work efficiently. If you set bad, MCQs, you get bad results for it. If I teach you, I'll give you a very interesting concept. I think some of the parents may be aware of this. If I teach you today and I meet you tomorrow, how am I supposed to know that what I taught you, you know it? So I have to ask you a question that will determine that what I taught you know it, not exactly what I told you. Because if I told you what I told you yesterday, then you will tell me again, then there's no point. So to be able to test it, I have to ask you a different thing. If you answer it, then I know that that's the correct thing. Except that if I ask you a question and you got it wrong, what is the implication that you know it? So if I ask you that, what is your name in French? You don't understand French. So you said Kumasi. It doesn't mean you don't know your name. It's just you got the question wrong. And sometimes when we are not careful, we teach people how to
Hello?
Okay, so there are ways to do these things and make sure. So when you're setting up a question, it's not as if it's too theoretical. It's to be able to test a person's understanding of the subject matter. And in coming back to the university, so we've been trying very hard because of our peculiar nature of numbers and resources that cannot match that. You find ways and means to deal with the problems. But the issue about using technology to teach is going to take a long time. For example, even the housing policy would have to change. If you are going to learn from home, then your room must be set up such that you have, places where you will not be disturbed. You have to have internet connections that are very strong enough to be able to stream. So imagine that in the next 5 years, we say we want to be technology-enhanced learning country. It means we have to break down a lot of our buildings to be able to do it, and that's not going to happen. So the practicality is that it's going to take a long time, but what COVID has taught us is that there's a future for this.
As you eloquently put it, you've mentioned the housing system. There are some homes with no proper ventilation, so when you are there, your brain freezes, right? There are places with no proper internet, so your class will be breaking. We saw an example just right now when you were speaking. For me, in the city, I've got MTN fiber at home. I have my MTN table net, so I'm always connected to very fast internet. Now, with all the challenges and the practical things you've mentioned, do you foresee us moving into full virtual classrooms, or in the next foreseeable future, you see us doing the hybrid system?
Yeah, I mean, technology is always going to be hybrid. And let me just give you the reasons for this. If I want to communicate with you and you are just close to me, why would I want to take a phone, press it, dial a number for it to respond to it? It doesn't make sense that way. So the technology will be to just tap you and talk to you. That's still technology. It doesn't have to be digital or electronic. So if, for example, a person lives in a village and there's no internet there, he will go to the next place where he can communicate. He could go to the next police station, the next church, the next facility where there's a available device or technology for him to be able to communicate. If that does not work, you move on to the next day and next. If you look at the gadgets that we have, you can have, for example, I like to watch you in my glasses. Yeah. So I want a situation where once I put on my glasses, I'm connected to the internet and I can see everything. If that does not work, I probably will use a phone. If that doesn't work, I'll probably use a laptop, which is in my bag. If that doesn't work, I'll probably put it on a desktop or maybe a server somewhere. So that's how you solve them. You have to bridge a number of these tools together to solve it. So it's always going to be a hybrid of tools that will allow you to do exactly what you are trying to do. I think.
That's a very interesting point, Dr. Irinchi. Thank you very much. Let's now get back to the studio. He made a very important point, the housing bit. And it's something that I've been speaking about for a very long time. If you are going to get food right, you need to get housing right, sanitation right, education right, and now the pandemic is teaching us that. I don't know whether any of you would want to make any additional points to what he said. Then if you make that point, we'll go into policy and how we can use policy incentives to help build a better environment for teaching and learning during this pandemic and post-pandemic.
Right.
Anis, your hand is up.
You know, what COVID-19 has done is that it's alerted us to our own shortcomings as a culture in terms of hygiene, in terms of space for children to concentrate. And I would tell you this, one of the most important things that we have to do in this country now is to teach people how to read. It's very important. It doesn't matter what equipment you have, what access you have. If you cannot read and understand what's on the internet, you are wasting your time. So the reading culture is something that has been promoted on TV. We should stop this superstition, things that we're doing on TV, you know, and some of these other crass things, you know. We want to use every means at our disposal. Young man is talking about this hybrid business, radio, television, whatever it is to teach young people how to read. Now, the other thing is this. There was a project that I did with Ghana National Association of Private Schools. And we went all over the country, from Accra, Kumasi to Tamale, to promote a culture of reading. And then the question is, does the culture promote reading? No. You see, we want to promote reading, but does the culture promote reading? And what I'm saying is this. Now we have to even begin to look at the noise levels that you have in the country. If you live in a compound house, you are doomed. Because where is the space and the peace and the quiet where you can settle somewhere quietly and begin to concentrate? How on earth do you do mathematics? X plus Y divided by cosine of something else, and you know,
find Z.
If you can't have the peace of mind to be able to do it. So what COVID has done is that our shortcomings have been exposed to us. The other thing I have is to talk to parents too, that make sure that wherever you are, there's a space that your child calls his or her own. And it can be a small desk. It can be a chair where the little books that they have, the books are there, the pencils, whatever it is that they have there, so that this becomes your office. This is your workstation. Let children begin to take agency for their own lives, so they are not excessively dependent on you. And then also another question too is for the teachers. And this is what we do at Gate Institute, to help teachers to develop what we call weekly forecast or schemes of work, so that on a weekly basis, people know what to do. Students know what to do. So that I know what I'm supposed to do for the first week, I know what I'm supposed to do for the second week, and so on. And all of that has to be electronic. So a big chunk of what we do now is getting teachers to move from the analog mindset into the digital mindset. How on earth in this day and age do you have analog teachers teaching in a digital generation? And the children are ready. So these are the things that we have to do. So I'm glad that we are doing this here at MTN, because now we need a serious collaboration between government and business. You know, we can't assume that government has the expertise that people who work in MTN do, because they don't. And then the support system, the enabling environment has to come from the government. So these two entities have to be joined at the hip to make sure that this is a national, I don't want to call it a calamity, a national necessity, that we have to be able to collaborate very seriously and put our selfish interests aside, you know, and see how it is that we can now connect to the whole country. Because I was in Tamale some time ago doing an interview for people to move on from the work that they're doing into headship positions and so on. But they have no access to information. And so we asked a basic question: who are the Democratic candidates and who are the Republican candidates? They have no idea, even if you look at some of our own issues here. So what I'm saying is that what COVID has done is that we cannot do business as usual. We have to now kick into practical elements where we have everybody has access to Wi-Fi.
So
it's
access to the internet and Wi-Fi should be treated as the country treats access to potable toilets, access to potable water, access to hospitals and clinics, and access to security. Wherever there is a Ghanaian, there must be internet, from what you are saying, because that's the key bridge that we have to cross into getting into the information world. And MTN is enabling the big yellow information and innovative world for all of us to connect to. Now,
I told this guy is a teacher. I'm going to drive into a classroom.
Yes, absolutely.
But when your uncle is a teacher, with years of experience, you started doing this before I was born. I took it from you.
You're doing very well. I love you for it.
Thank you. Let me come to Krista then Heather.
Well, I mean, I think he's illustrated all the points.
Yeah.
You know, the public-private partnership is really critical. I'm even looking at, you know, as Prof was talking here in Kumasi, looking at local realities.
Yeah.
There are thousands and thousands of students, and then I look at Webster or Nashesi, which is in a private institution. We should also be looking at partnerships and collaborations amongst private and public institutions in this country. And the government also, of course, supporting that.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about the future generation and the kind of skills and so on they're going to have. We may even look at the idea of having sort of hubs all over cities and in rural areas where communities can also access this internet. Because even the subject areas that we're teaching in the university, we have to look at the realities of the world, right? We're dealing with issues of immigration, we're dealing with war, we're dealing with pandemics, and we need to start focusing on the topics that we're teaching and that it's a communal process. We've also seen through this period, as you rightfully said, I mean, it is a situation where parents, guardians have to be involved also in their children's education. So we have to bring in all stakeholders. It's not just government, public,
parents
private.
and the guardians bit.
Yes.
Do we need to have training programs for parents and guardians to prepare them to also ensure there is effective education? Because now they are practically the main supervisors and the main enablers. If there's a child at home and the child has to join a school, is the parent who, do we need to train them as well as we do?
Right. Part of what I do when I train teachers is also bringing the parents as well.
Okay.
Because it has to be complementary.
Yeah.
That this is what we're doing in school. What is it that you can do at home to support exactly what you're doing?
Yeah.
And what I keep saying is this. Again, we cannot be hypocritical when we are raising young people. They don't listen to us. They watch what we do. So if you want a child to read, what do?
You read.
They want to see you read.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you are being hypocritical. You don't tell them, look, you are wasting your time, go and read, when you are not doing anything. So this aspect is very, very important because the kids are at home now. You know, we can't say that the whole country can come on board that way, especially for parents who cannot read. But let's develop a critical mass.
Okay.
So for parents who can read, they have to really be on top of this. It's their children we're talking about. You know, a little training that I did with Boasi last week is this. Your children are the chosen people. The chosen people are not in heaven or in Jerusalem or in Bethlehem. Your children are the chosen people, and they are your responsibility. God has given them to you. You didn't buy them. You know, you had to work for them. They survived on your lap.
Yeah.
Now we have to go the next level and not think that somebody else is going to do that for us. So what I'm challenging parents is this. Everyone has to be on board. If you don't know how to read, begin to learn it.
Yeah.
Look, my watchman never went to school before, but he can use the telephone.
Yeah.
He can dial the numbers. It became a necessity. Now what he's trying to do is to try to put in the names of the people that he's calling. It's become a necessity. This guy is over 70 years old. So what I'm saying is that there should not be an excuse. That is why I admire Kwame Nkrumah so much. Because in 1957, when Ghana became independent, you know, we had the Ministry of Information, having caravans all over the country, teaching people exactly what is the health standards, how you want to maintain your environment, how you want to grow flowers and so on. We used to do that in class 1 in the 1950s. But we are not doing it now. We expect that someone from heaven is going to do those things for us. So what I'm saying is this. Our lives are in our own hands. And the COVID-19 is telling us that we have to get our acts together.
Yeah.
You know. So again, we need to begin to now let that information sink in.
Great.
Anytime I go to families and I see that they are watching movies on superstition and Nigerian movies and that, so my goodness, is this the best that you can do with your time?
Yeah.
So this is where we are now. We cannot be hypocritical. Thank you.
Let me come to Heather for your thoughts.
Sure. So just to build on some of the challenges that have been raised, to give us a bit of statistics, the training for teachers, the couple hundred teachers that I mentioned, we've been getting some data from them to understand, how this online training is going to go for them. And about 70% say that they anticipate having challenges with connecting online, mainly because of cost of data and connectivity. So those are real challenges that we do have to address if we want to see online training scale widely. But and several other challenges, all related, health, sanitation, all this coming together. But I do personally believe that all problems are solvable. We just have to commit to solving them. And there are creative, innovative ways we can get around every problem, just as how Penn's core mission is to enable practical science learning in spite of whatever environments or lack of resources you have. It's still possible to come out with something that's really meaningful and engaging for students. And in the same way, I believe that we can come out with innovative solutions to enable students and teachers around the country to access online training and teaching, but it requires a commitment to do that. And I think that's one of the key things I hope to see the decision makers of various institutions take a stand on.
And it's very important that we are all committed to this, because if we train today's child better, tomorrow when we are old, they will be the better doctors who will take care of us. They will be the better agronomists who will take care of us. They will be the better engineers who will create the things that will make our lives better. And MTN is facilitating this conversation so that together we build a better, brighter, yellow future for our children. Now, for those of you running your businesses, I've still got good news for you from MTN. The MTN Unicom service, which is a unified communication solution with tailor-made features such as conferencing, IVR and call center solutions, is here. Register your participation for your business to be selected to win 3 months free subscription to the Unicom service from MTN Business. It's a fantastic service that will help you manage your business efficiently in these times and beyond. So send your business name and your contact information to mtnbusiness.gh@mtn.com. Now we'll go for a break. When we return, I'll be reading your messages and your questions for our panelists. And the 5 most interactive users from today's session will be winning 200 Ghana cedis worth of shopping vouchers. Christmas is just around the corner. It's been a difficult year. Some people lost their jobs, others' incomes dropped. There's 200 Ghana cedis for you to use to show up your Christmas shopping, and it's brought to you by MTN. Quick break, we'll be right back.
Looking for the best way to stay connected to the world? Introducing Ayoba, the 100% African social network that allows you to keep in touch with your relatives by sending messages, pictures, and videos for free. Manage your money without stress with Momo service included. Stay aware on the news, animate your communities, groups, and forums. All this without using your data. Isn't it great? Join Ayoba, the 100% African and fun social network that doesn't use data for MTN subscribers.
I've got over 178 comments, and I have just about 30 more minutes to wrap up the conversation. So I'll do my best to go through a lot of the messages and your comments and your questions. Now, Ayub K. Ando says, Kwame Nkrumah was right with his approach, as Anis mentioned. Derek Ejakweku says, thank you, Anis. You are truly inspirational. Ivi Jirebati says, creating more jobs is only possible if we train the children right in these times. And Alaji Abdul says, I would love to come live with Anis and any of your panelists for a month. I really need some discipline in learning and understanding. Essie Njoku says, can Dr. Beam elaborate on the challenges the teachers surveyed expressed that they anticipate? If possible, what's the makeup of the teachers in question? Let's get an answer to this before we go through the rest of the questions.
Okay, sure. So again, we surveyed close to 100 teachers coming from Western Region, Ahanta West, and Zima East districts, and also in Kumasi. And these are all public school teachers, primary and JHS for JHS, they're science teachers. For primary school, obviously they're subject, class teachers. So as I mentioned, the main challenges they stated that they would have in going online are poor connectivity and then cost of data. But we dug a bit deeper with the survey as well to try to understand their exposure, their familiarity with some of these tools, and not just at the surface level. And so what we also saw was that less than 30% of them had used any online communication platform beyond WhatsApp in terms of, sort of communication platforms you could envision using for educational purposes.
Yeah.
And then less than 20% of them said that they had ever taken an online course or an online training. So this is a stark, realization that teachers need exposure and they need supports to get familiar with these online tools. I mean, just as Anis said earlier, the students, this is their language, right? They're living in social media, they're online, they're digital. If the teachers can't speak that language, it's going to be very tough for them to build that rapport and teach effectively. So to me, this is a key thing we have to focus on is the teachers need supports. They need to be oriented on how they can leverage some of these platforms. And I think their interest is there. Their interest is there, but we need to give them attention and support them with this.
Daniel Arthur says, very interactive, good work, MTN and Business World. Alhaji Abdul says, all problems are solvable with motivation. A lot of us are frustrated. We just need to motivate ourselves and get through these times together and get the right education for our children. Isaac Osei Appa says, at what age can a parent start reading to his or her ward? I have 2 girls. They are 3 and 5.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've been reading to my daughter since she was born, literally. Yes. Make sure that, in the evening, that there's always a bedtime story. And I think as we were talking about earlier, and you mentioned, it's so important that you model what you want to see from your children. Because if they see you on the telly all day long, I mean, what are they going to think they need to do? So I think it begins very, very, very early.
Nice. I was told when my wife was pregnant that we should read to the child even when he was in the womb. I read something online, so we used to read, and then we used to play classical music and jazz because we were told it would help in the brain development. And when he was born, as soon as he was born, we started reading to him, bought a lot of books. So I think it's never too early to read to a child and help them develop their brain and their knowledge base, which will affect the skills that they would also have. Now, this question goes to Heather again. Says, do you enroll the public in your practical education network? Who if people are interested in joining, is anybody allowed to join?
Yeah, sure. If anybody listening is interested to join our training, you can find us on social media. On Facebook, you can search for Practical Education Network. Send us a message there. We're on Instagram at Practical Education. We're on Twitter at pen_ED. So you can reach out to us on any of the platforms. We'll be happy to onboard you.
Marcus Yao Komada says the unreliability of the internet connection at certain times of the day disrupts the flow of work and learning. And he likes the fact that all of you are saying the government should work with the telcos, especially MTN, which is the biggest telco, to ensure that every corner of the country, every child, every device gets uninterrupted data services and affordable too, so that we can use that for education. Edmond B. Frimpong says, a great opportunity for Africa to restart. Speed is a vital determinant. So he says, this pandemic presents a great opportunity for us. Now, Isaac Osayapa again says, Anis has really touched the core issues of lack of education in Ghana, is that we do not like to read. And so we need to have a reading culture. If you can read and understand, you can watch a YouTube video and grasp whatever is being taught in the video and you apply it in your life. So Anis, he says you've really touched on the big thing for him, reading. Shady Lashad says, reading is not our culture, but we need to make it our culture. Now, let's see ask a follow-up question to Dr. Beam. She says, how can we effectively combat remote learning fatigue, particularly for students? I think this is more to Krista, because Krista brought up this angle of the conversation.
Yes. Well, I think that some of what I was talking about were what the instructors might do, particularly in our case at Webster. We've been doing a lot of training and webinars on engagement. And so there are different aspects. For example, I mentioned earlier of Zoom. We've been using Teams. We've been using Office 365, and just making sure that those tools are going to be consistently interactive for the students, because we know that attention spans are not very long, right? And so to keep remote learning interesting, you need to make sure that your audience is awake. We have professors, for example, that insist that students keep their video cameras on the whole time. Because there is a tendency when you turn it off to go to other parts of the house and so on and so forth. So I do think it's about the engagement, but in a hybrid model, ideally we would want to have a mixture of both. And I think that's what we need to work towards, because the fatigue is real. And we're at the point right now that I think only through training on tips as to how you can engage students, that would probably be the best thing that one could do from the teacher aspect. From the student aspect, I mean, I'm dealing with that with my own daughter, so there must be breaks and so on throughout the day where they are still getting, their exercise, making sure that their well-being is, taken into account.
Great. Now, Peter Mensah, this is not Peter Mensah of Hollywood, who was in 300 Spartans. That Peter Mensah actually is also from Kumasi. So now this Peter Mensah says, even the concept of using digital copy of books like PDFs, etc., is alien to a lot of teachers and students. So we need to really push the bit about reading. So everybody's talking about reading now. Vera Kumsin says, reading to your children really helps in their development. Emmanuel says, the students must be made to realize the use of all the digital platforms, and that they should know that they can go beyond the conventional use for entertainment to drive the demand and the need for teachers to use them better. And he's talking about YouTube, Facebook videos, and all the other regular digital platforms we use, including Twitter. Now, this message here says, in what ways can directors of private institutions come to a round table with the public institutions and help bridge the gap for the country as a whole and for the future of learning in Ghana? Is this something, Anis, you want to talk about? Private learning institutions. When COVID came, there was this thing about state institutions, public educational institutions getting help, getting their salaries paid and everything, and private institutions not getting some of these things, and it was quite a big thing in Ghana. She basically wants to know how the public sector, private sector, the states can be in harmony in dealing with the challenges of the sector so that we deliver quality education.
Right. I mean, that's a very important point there. I remember I served as on a board of Academic City College, and they have the computer facilities. So what we did was that we brought in some of the public school teachers. For the first time, they have access to computers because they had it. It will be very difficult to find. I haven't seen it where we have a government agency that is equipped with, let's say, 50 computers that are working or 100 computers that are working. So when we bring in these other private establishments, because they have these things already, but again, the collaboration is very important. Under no circumstances, in the age that we find ourselves, where government thinks that it can do things on its own. So again, back to the private schools. I also know private schools that on the weekends attract people in the community, the young people in the community, to use their labs, to use their computers, but under strict supervision, so that they don't destroy the machines and equipment there. So this has to go on, and also the churches. The churches are not supposed to be just collecting money. What I'm saying is this: they have the audiovisual equipment. We can hear their preaching loud and clear everywhere,
all the time.
Monday now let's bring the kids in and teach them how to read and write. We can start off by teaching them how to read and write from the Bible, but we also have to bring a literary material. Writers from Africa, Chinua Achebe, Ama Atedu, Ifo Sutherland, and so on. This is a community project, and we are being called upon that all hands need to be on deck. So that's a good question there. How do we give of ourselves especially the institutions that are equipped in some way to lend a helping hand.
Interesting you're mentioning churches. I did a survey of educational institutions and religious institutions when it comes to their structures in the country. And we've got more church buildings than school buildings. So if we actually want to use all the infrastructure available and we bring all these in, we can actually have better social distancing in our classrooms. If we want to do a hybrid system, we can deploy their PA systems and their that's a good point, Uncle Anis. We are just about wrapping up here, but before we do that, I want to go to Kumasi. Dr. Irenchi is still on the line via video conferencing to give us his parting words, what he thinks we should, some of the things he thinks we should do now as a country to ensure that we continue to survive within these pandemic times and thrive beyond it. And then I'll come here to take the final words from my panelists here, and I'll announce the winners for the MTN Wow Moment. 5 people are getting 200 Ghana Cedi shopping vouchers, 3 from Facebook, 2 to YouTube. I have the winners. I'll announce them after the final submissions. Doc, over to you.
Yeah. So let me give you another scenario and probably start giving you some answers or solutions to some of the problems that we have. During the COVID-19 time, I think we changed one of our applications, and I asked the students to go and download a new browser, a new version of the browser, so that they can use to connect. And I think the size was about 50 meg. And the response I got was that if they download that browser at that, with that data, they might not be able to have enough data for the week. I mean, this is something that should tell you the practicality of the challenges that we have. And in terms of policy, it's important to, like we've already discussed, find a strategy that allows the students and faculties and anyone involved in education to be able to connect without having to overly spend so much money to do it. As an university, in the last, I think maybe 5 years ago, we've been trying to do a Wi-Fi on campus, and it was very difficult at the time. So what we did was to engage all the telcos. I mean, you were mentioning about private partnership activities. Thankfully, by law, the institutions can do that. They don't need to go and ask too much permission before they do that, because it's allowed. So we had to engage the major telcos in Ghana and divided the campus into 2 and gave them the option of providing the service of internet connectivity. So practically on campus, the campus is about 7 square mile radius. If you have an idea about the size of the university, you would understand. And the idea is to be able to cover almost every place with Wi-Fi, so that wherever a student is, will be able to connect. The last couple of, I think last year or so, we've been trying to think about how to even extend beyond campus using a TV white space, so that even when you are not living on campus, because about 70% of the people don't live on campus. So while they are on campus trying to connect to the services that we have, they that's fine. But after 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening, they should still be able to connect to the university services. And the idea is to be able to use other connectivities to be able to do that. So we've been very progressive in terms of what to do, but of course there's a lot of challenge there. I have to also state that I don't work for the government, but in the last year or two, we've had a very interesting engagement where we are connected to what we call the Garnet, which is the National Research Network that allows us to connect with a higher speed than the ordinary services. And for example, the connection from Accra to Kumasi is a 10 gig pipe, so that when we get to Kumasi, we can distribute among the institutions that are on campus. And this same connection allows us to go to the US undersea with the internet connection too, and Giant in Europe as well. So there has been some progress in terms of connectivity. What we haven't done well as an institution or as a country is how to interconnect at a very cheaper cost. For example, if I'm connecting to you at MTN, why do I have to be on an internet that goes out of the country before it comes back? Why can't I have what we call the one within Ghana, for example? I will have an exchange where we're able to interconnect without having to pay so much money. And I think that is something that has to come from government, so that every place in Ghana, so long as you are communicating with someone in Ghana, you will pay some money, but it will not be as huge as you are connecting now. These are policies that need to be part of our very driver's educational system, so that this idea of interconnection can work, because not many institutions have the type of campus that we have that is large enough for it to have a home. And the last thing I want to say is this. Many people move from their homes to a campus like ours, not necessarily because they just want to come and learn. Where they are, they don't have probably electricity, they may not have good water, they may not have good health facility. When you're on campus, you have the state of the art, at least from Ghana's perspective, you have everything. Your light will hardly go off on campus, you would have your water, you would have your, so it's a place of livelihood. So the idea that people should be able to stay home and work, that's when your home is conducive. So we are always going to rely on a campus like this, but within the campus, which is large, it's still you are going to live in your hostel, but your hostel must be conducive enough to interconnect. My very last comment is that many of the grades that we get, I think people who recruit students must understand what it means. For example, if a person scored 75 in my course, it means that he's 75% good in the subject as at the time he seated in my class for only 3 hours in a week. That's what it means. So once we begin to understand the meaning of the score attached to a person, we'll be able to know what it means, be able to engage them when they go out. Universities are not designed to be doing the practical things, because there's no time window to do all of it. But the gap is that between the time that they're in the institution or in the university, the time that they are engaged practically outside, that's where the gap is. And I think that's coming from a university perspective, it's important to make this point that it's not as if universities have become very theoretical, because you need the theory. I think one of the panelists mentioned that if he studied music for 4 years, he couldn't play any music. But then you can go to YouTube. When you go to YouTube, you are still going to learn based on the theory that you gathered. That now at least you know what the stuff is. So once you see it, you know what to read. That theory is what universities provide. And it's important to make that distinction very clear, that the institutions are not designed to build vehicles and cars on campus, but to give you the skill that will allow you to be able to engage when you move out of that space. And between the time you are moving out and the institution and the companies, that's where the gap is. And that's what we must emphasize on to make sure that these things are resolved. Thank you very much. Yeah.
It's been great having you, Dr. Irenchi. We wish you all the best. I know Care University is celebrating the 70th anniversary next year. We'll be with you to celebrate that 70th anniversary.
Yeah.
And God bless you. And our greetings to everybody at Care University, to Professor Rita Akosia Dixon, the first female vice chancellor of the university, and to all the team at Care University. Thank you for joining us. Now, let me come into the studio. Final words. Should I start from here or start from Anis?
Start from her. Start from her.
We started a conversation
She
from
inspires me.
Okay.
Right, so I think I'll try to summarize some of the points that I made. So COVID is challenging us to move into new ways of doing things, and we shouldn't let this moment pass us by. We shouldn't let the world evolve into new places, and then we are just still waiting for something else to happen. I think let's join into the uncertainty, the changing world that is here with us, and we'll definitely learn and take something new out of it as we try to evolve with the changing times. And I think there are 3 things that we should focus on as we do that. One is commitments. We should commit to changing and evolving, and commit to incorporating some level of digital work into education in each of our institutions. Secondly, I think we have to focus on teachers, especially at the basic school and secondary school level. At the university level, I think it's a bit different, but at the lower levels, we have to focus on teachers. Trying to reach students directly through digital means is both hard and may not be effective if we skip over the teachers. The teachers need supports to incorporate online approaches into their own toolkit, and they're ready to do it. And then finally, hands-on practical work is still front and center in what students need to learn effectively, and we have to incorporate that into our changing ways of teaching, and it's possible. We've been doing it at Ashesi on Zoom. Even though people are in different places, they're working together, they're talking online. You know, try putting this thing over here, put the paper on top of the thing. And it's able to work, right?
Okay.
Maybe it's not the perfect situation, but it's still possible. And so we should try to keep finding ways of incorporating hands-on practical work into education.
Thank you very much, Dr. Beam. Let me come to you, Krista.
Yes, thank you so much. We've learned, I think, all of us a lot today, but I think what we need to understand is that we need to embrace technology. And COVID-19 has made us all realize that. I think that moving forward, most institutions around the world have a hybrid approach, because I do not think the traditional brick and mortar building idea is completely gone. It cannot fade away overnight. And the humanistic aspect must always be considered. We need to also look at this period of which, while there's great innovation, there's also been great isolation. And so mental health is important. We also need to look at and touch on the fact that with students who have disabilities and need accommodations, how are we dealing with them in this new virtual space? And that is really, really critical. I think we also need to look at the fact that education is a fundamental right, and everyone should have access to education and to knowledge. And so as a result, we will need to collaborate. It's going to be a collaborative process. Government must be involved, private as well as public institutions can work together so that we can do this seamlessly and everyone can have that basic access to internet. As you mentioned before, every Ghanaian should have access to internet in order to learn, in order to even take on some of the reading skills, right? We have ebooks today, you know, and so that you can access a lot over the internet. Beyond that, I did touch on the fact that soft skills are critical. And we do need to see that shift, because we've got to prepare young people for the careers of tomorrow. So emotional intelligence, entrepreneurial skills, being adaptable, that's what we're going to need to have successful managers. No matter what sector you're going to be in the future, you need to have the skills in addition to the knowledge acquisition.
Great. Now, finally, Anis.
Yeah, I would like a quotation from Charles Dickens. We live in the best of times and the worst of times. The worst of times is the pandemic, and we have no idea when it's going to leave us. But on the other hand, we also live in the best of times. So I'm talking to students now that in our time, it was very difficult to get materials to read. Now you can go on the internet, you can go on Google, and there's no information under the sun that you can have. But what I'm suggesting for teachers to do is to make sure that students have access to the schemes of work and weekly forecast, so they can take it upon themselves as a part of what we call shared responsibility, so that they are not waiting for teachers. You know, this has to be incorporated, but it has to be structured where every kid in this country has an idea of what the expectation is week 1, week 2, week 3, whether school is in session or not. We have to be ongoing. Learning never stops. And then my last point is for parents, that your children are your crown jewels. Don't think that someone else is going to raise them better than you. So what you need to do as parent is begin to add value to yourself. What are the needs of my children? What is it that I can do to help out? That's very, very important. And I think, Akoto, you made a point here, that it's in our selfish interest to raise our students and our children properly. Because one day, they are the ones who are going to take care of us. And I'll cite a quick example. My mother is in Kumasi. She's about 95 years old. And she can't walk because her legs were stolen. Her legs were swollen. I took her to Konfanochi Hospital. And you won't believe this. The doctor, that day, the doctor who was in charge was one of my students. And there's nothing in the world this doctor will not have done for us. So what I'm saying to parents is this: raise your kids, because one day they're going to take care of you. And also to teachers, make sure that you give the best of yourself and be prepared sufficiently to add value to who you are. Because if you don't add value to yourself, how on earth are you going to add value to somebody else? Yeah. So part of that is the discipline. You know, the discipline, the emotional skills that we need, that we have to be attentive to young people and look at our job as a sacred responsibility. That's my...
Thank you very much. Thank you. This is the 30th MTN Business World Executive Breakfast Meeting. And my panelist, Anis Hafa, educationist and founder of the Gates Institute, Krista Ellis Sanders Bobtoya, Campus Director, Webster University Ghana, Dr. Heather Beam, CEO, Practical Education Network, lecturer at Ashesi University, and Dr. Peter Mwaku Irinchi, Senior Lecturer, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. You've been awesome, and I've learned so much from you. So all those of you watching, we know when you give us the applause, we will not see it, right? So just share the video so that others can watch the video later and also get to learn from some of the things shared by my excellent panelists. Now is the time for me to announce the winner, the 5 winners for the MTN Wow moment. Are you ready? Drum roll. Now the winners are getting vouchers worth 200 Ghana cedis each. Now the first winner, ladies and gentlemen, is Derek Ejakweku. Derek Ejakweku will contact you and get your voucher to you. The next person is Edmond K. Frimpong. Edmond K. Frimpong. And the last person on Facebook is Alhaji Abdul. Alhaji Abdul. So we have 3 winners from Facebook. Now these are the 2 winners from YouTube. Isaac Ama from YouTube. Isaac Ama from YouTube. And David Ikan also from YouTube. Congratulations to you, gentlemen, for winning. Last month, we got a lot of women winning. This month, the men have taken over. Next month, it may be 50-50, who knows. Thank you all very much for tuning in. This has been the 30th MTN Business World Executive Breakfast Meeting. The theme for today, redefining education in the age of the new normal. And this event is brought to you by MTN and Business World magazine. And for those of you who are still yet to experience the MTN Unicom service, it is a unified communication solution which has tailor-made features such as conferencing, IVR, and call center solutions. Register your participation to be selected to win 3 months. I mean 3 months, 1 to 3 months free connection to the Unicom service from MTN Business. Send your business name and contact information to mtnbusiness.gh@mtn.com. It's been a great morning. My name is Kojo Akoto Boating. I work for City FM and City TV. I'm an analyst on The Breakfast Show and also the head of digital media. It's been a great morning. It's been great having you. And I'd like to say a big thank you to MTN for continuously supporting these thought leadership and thoughts leadership sessions to think about issues that affect us and how we can make them better. If every company in Ghana invested as much in developing human capital, in developing the space, and in growing the environment for businesses and humans to thrive, I'm sure Ghana would be the best country to live in. So thank you to MTN for this, and thank you to Business World for also facilitating this. Thank you also for watching. Make sure you follow MTN on all their platforms, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Follow Business World as well. And together, let's build a big yellow world of possibilities powered by innovation, which is also powered by MTN. Thank you and enjoy your day.
Everywhere you go, MTN. Everywhere you go, MTN.